Test. We are going to get started in just about 5 minutes. We begin right time, right at 5 o'clock. So you're a little bit early. Thank you for being here. But if you'd like to maybe relax, get comfortable, maybe get tea or coffee or something, we are going to get started right at 5 o'clock. Hi, everybody. If you're just joining us, thank you. We're a little bit early. We're going to begin right at 5. So if you're just a little patient with us, right at 4 minutes from now, we're going. And then also right at 5, we're going to start our interpretation function for those family members who need this in Spanish or Arabic. Still waiting on our interpreters to join. Hi, Sasha. We're going to get started in just a few minutes. Should have been prepared and had some music going or something like that. Hold music. Thank you all for being here. Hello, Bayana.
Hello, everyone.
Thanks for being here, Bayana. Let me get the interpretation going.
Sure.
Actually, in order to do that, I have to stop sharing. So give me a quick second. English 2.
Hello, everybody.
Patty.
Hello.
Happy to have you here, Patty.
I'm very happy to be here. Happy belated birthday, Sam.
Thank you. Thanks, Patty.
My pleasure.
When was your birthday, Samantha?
Thank you.
When was your birthday?
It was Monday.
Oh, congratulations. Happy birthday.
Yeah, thanks.
All right, it is 5 o'clock, so let's go ahead and begin. Let me start my screen share again. Okay, thank you all for being here. It is 5 o'clock, and we like to respect everyone's time, get started on time, and then end at time. So I want to give you all the official welcome on behalf of the Alvord Unified School District staff and Board of Education. Today we have a very special conversation and dialogue. We're excited for this. When I did our survey of families throughout the district as to what sort of dialogues you all would want us to bring to you, support for students with autism or on the autism spectrum came up. So we're very thankful that our partners in our special education department stepped up and are now here with us today. They created this presentation, and I'd like to give special shout outs to Director Michelle Sebastian, who's here, and also give everyone on the special education department team an opportunity to introduce themselves. So, Director Sebastian, would you like to introduce yourself and your team?
Yes, good evening. Welcome. Thank you guys for joining us today. We have a really great presentation on how to support our students with autism. And so I will go ahead and hand it off to our lovely program specialist.
Okay, thank you. And so with that, we will start with introductions. And if we can go to our next slide for this one. I'm Sam Belton. I am currently a program specialist in Elbridge Unified, but my specialty is I am a speech language pathologist, and I've worked in the schools and private practice setting for over 14 years in the speech field.
Welcome, Sam. Keisha, would you like to introduce yourself?
Hi, I'm Keisha McMullen. I am a program specialist in Alvord Unified School District. Some of my background, I was a behavioral specialist, a school psychologist, and a special ed teacher. I have over 20 plus years in education.
Welcome, Keisha and Rashawn.
I am Rashawn Hendricks, and I am a board certified behavior analyst with the district. And I have been in the field for 15 years, which almost 10 of those have been in the school setting. So we're really happy to be able to share some information with you guys from our different areas of expertise. And we hope that you guys get a lot of benefit out of that. I did see we had one question already in the chat, so I wanted to make sure that we were able to give some information. The question was just that they have a kiddo who is undergoing an evaluation for autism and wanted to know how to get him enrolled in preschool. If you want to go ahead and just reach out to the special education department, we can help you with that process and get that assessment process started for you. So you can either call the special education department, you can also email myself, which I'll put my email in the chat, and I'd be happy to help you with that.
Perfect, thank you. Yes, Ms. Hendricks, would you be able to put into the chat an email or a phone number? So to all our families who are here, you see just the level of expertise that you have in the room. So please, as Huda just did in the chat, take advantage of that. Put in a chat question, a comment. We are all in this space together, and we're all here to support you and your scholars, because we know that when you're successful in guiding your scholars through their educational programming, your child is going to be successful. So we're all on the same team, and we're excited to be in this dialogue. All right, let's get right into it.
All right, so some of the things that we'll be talking about in tonight's presentation is different strategies that we can utilize with our kiddos in order to help them learn and to become more independent. We'll also talk about how to support their communication needs, and then also talk about different strategies that we can utilize to support behaviors and help our kiddos regulate themselves emotionally or sensory as well.
If we could, I see in I see on our screen that Miss Patty, our interpreter, has put a slow down icon. Thank you, Patty. So as we're speaking, if we could be mindful that we have Miss Patty is listening, so is Bayana, listening to the information, processing, and then translating and speaking that. So if we could just be a little bit more mindful of how fast we speak. I do the same thing, and Patty always has to tell me, slow down. Thank you, Patty, and thank you, Bayana. I also did not mention, I'm sorry, and I'll mention it now, that we do have the interpretation happening simultaneously. If you need this information in Spanish or in Arabic, we have Patty is interpreting into Spanish. Thank you, Patty. And we have Miss Bayana, who is doing the simultaneous interpretation into Arabic. In your Zoom tools, you'll see the option for interpretation. You can choose either the Spanish channel, or it's a little weird. It's Russian. We know it's in the language is Arabic, but Zoom doesn't have the option for Arabic. I'm not sure why, so we just arbitrarily chose Russian. It could have been anything else, but just either choose Spanish or Russian, and you'll get the interpretation. All right, let's go back.
I think we're good to go to our next slide. So with that, just a brief overview of what is autism. It is a spectrum disorder, which really states that no two kids with autism are going to look alike. Every student who has autism are going to have different strengths. They're going to have different areas of difficulty, and they may have impacts on the way that they communicate with others, how they socialize, how they interact within the world. And with that, they are unique. They have their own strengths and challenges. And so with that, we are going to talk about a variety of strategies on things that we have seen have worked. But please keep in mind, it may work for some kids and not for others. And there might be different strategies that would apply to your child. And so we're going to start off with talking about some learning strategies.
Okay, so when we're talking about learning strategies, we're just looking at how to support, and we're going to be talking about how to support the learning and thinking. So when we're talking about children with ASD, we already know that they learn differently. A lot of the kiddos are visual learners. So we need to make sure that we're supplying them with a lot of visual supports, but we're also giving them that opportunity to figure out what is their learning profile. A lot of kids learn best with structure and predictability. So when we're saying that information, we need it to be structured, but we also need it to have a predictability. Kids need to know what's happening, when is it happening, and how is it happening. So that routine is very good for them. When we're talking about those abstract ideas, anything that is abstract, we really need to break it down. Those verbal instructions, it always needs to have a visual paired with it, but those verbal instructions need to be short and concise, but it also needs to be in the language that students can understand it. That's why you'll always hear us saying either verbal and visuals together, because that abstract and verbal instruction is a very hard concept for them to understand. And we know that repetition, and practice for any new skills. So once our students learn those skills, it's just constantly repeating repetition. It gives them what they need. Go ahead. Okay. Then we always want to focus on students' learning strengths, their confidence. That builds their confidence. When we know what their strengths are, that builds their confidence, and it gives them more opportunities to participate in their learning environment. But it also allows for us to build that confidence once we figure out their learning profile. So we don't like to focus on the difficulty. Let's always celebrate those strengths. We need to be able to identify the kiddo's strength, because it builds their confidence, but it also allows for them to want to try new things. And trying new things with our kiddos is very important when they're on the spectrum, especially when we are trying to bring them into the school environment. We need to know from parents, and also it just helps us if you already know that your kids are visuals or they love certain interests, that will really help the teachers. Then we also know that a lot of our kiddos are good with visual memory. That some of the kiddos that I've come across, their visual memory is so good that they remember things way back. I have kids from 8th grade, 9th grade, remember things that happened in 1st grade. And they're very good. They pay attention to details for them. They will find things and they will learn it, the details, the organization, and anything about their interests. We have kiddos who love Bluey, from kiddos who love anything from anime, just finding those interests and really focusing on that, turning that learning, taking something that they love and turning it into a learning opportunity allows for kiddos to connect with the academic portions of life. Go ahead, please. Then we're always looking for visual and hands-on activities. When we're trying to say, like, why does visuals work? A lot of kids need those visuals because it allows for them to not only see it, but to also grasp the concept. Because when we talk, I always say, sometimes we talk too much and it just sounds like the old Charlie Brown womp to them. But if you put a visual with it, they will love it. It actually reduces confusion. It also helps them understand, and it also helps them know what is expected and what are the steps. So some of those visual supports look like visual schedules, task charts, or even choice boards, so just a few to name. Go ahead, please. And so when we're talking about hands-on activities, we're always talking about kids love to touch, move, explore, especially for some of those abstract ideas, especially when we get into the math and science, making it more concrete by bringing in that hands-on, by allowing them to touch it, to feel it. It allows for them to connect with the academic portions, but it also allows for them to feel it, to move it, to see it. So you'll always hear in the classroom environments, teachers are talking about, we need hands-on, we need movement. Kids need to move, they need to move around, they need to touch it, they need to feel it. It allows for that connection. So some of those examples, even at home, cooking together, taking little objects, like when we're saying money, making it actually count that real money, pull out those pennies, those dimes, and actually have the kids feel it. For science at home, taking balloons, blowing it up, letting them see what happens when you let the air out. A lot of that, just a lot of hands-on, taking some flour, mixing it with water, allowing them to feel the texture of things. Go ahead, please. And this is just a visual when we're talking about, we put it all together for you. It's just a quick little visual of bringing it all together about how kids on the spectrum learns differently, but it's also reminding us visuals, confidence, build strength, focusing on the strengths, focusing on the visual learnings, hands-on learning. We can go ahead. Now we're going to talk about that cognitive strategies. What can we do to promote and to build some of our cognitive strategies? So one of the first things you're going to always want to do is break those tasks into smaller steps. Sometimes, I'm a parent and we just go, we got to have this done. But if we break those tasks, even if it's just folding clothes, giving instructions on how to make a bed, if we break it into smaller tasks, into manageable steps, it allows for kids to actually accomplish a little bit and a little bit and a little bit, like giving directions of, sometimes we say, clean your room. Well, that's very abstract to kids. But if you break it down into pick up your toys, fold your bed, pick up this, put your clothes in the hamper. These are things that kids understand. It's broken down into smaller steps, and it's actually broken down into smaller tasks, and they feel like they're accomplishing something and they can just check it off. It's not like, go clean your room. That's very abstract to them, because you walk into the room and they're probably like, wow, that's a lot that you're asking me to do. And then they get frustrated and they're like, well, what is it that you want? And then they don't complete those tasks. Always providing clear and consistent instructions. We need to make sure the language is simple and is direct language, and to avoid abstract phrases. So instead of behave yourself, we can say, sit in that chair. We actually need to tell them what we want them to do. If we want them to pick up their clothes, actually say, pick up the blue shirt. So they actually know what it is, what we're asking them to do, and it's very clear and consistent instruction. Okay. Use repetition. One more. All right. I think they're saying the volume is really low. Use repetition in practice. We always want to revisit skills or concepts. We want to actually build for mastery. So when we're saying repetition in practice, we want to constantly repeat, practice something that they might have been mastered a month ago. Go back and revisit it so that we're constantly just doing it step by step. We're repeating it. We're constantly trying to keep making sure that we have that mastery. You can go ahead. Okay. Then one of the things that we always need to do is allow processing time. We need to allow kids to actually take in the information. So when we're speaking, we have to give them a second to process what we're saying so that they can actually understand it, and then they can respond. So if we're saying, pick up this, do this, give kids time to respond. and avoid rushing through things. We need to always encourage practice independence. We need to do patience. We need to also understand that we might want to go fast, but kids have to take that time to process that information. And then one of the other strategies is using visual timers and cues. So I love timers. We all have timers in our daily lives as adults, but also teaching kids how to use those visual timers and how to use those cues allow for them to complete tasks. Just start teaching them early, because I know for kids that are not in school yet, and we started at home, it actually transitioned, but also teaching our kids, some of our kids do not like timers or do not like seeing it, but also teaching them how to tolerate using those visual timers and those cues or those sand timers. But we always want to model and demonstrate. We want to model and demonstrate the skills that we want kids to do, to achieve. We just can't say, go do this. We need to always show them and also guide them through it step by step. So when we say model and demonstrate, we just need to model what we want and then allow them to do it. But then if they're not successful, we can then break it down into smaller tasks and then model and then demonstrate and then do it step by step to just encourage that independence, but also encouraging students to actually complete tasks. You can go ahead. And then we always want to talk about teaching. Okay. We always want to talk about teaching functional skills. And that's one of the things that we need to make sure that we're teaching kids: how to tell time, using a calendar, how to manage money, and follow a recipe, especially, even at the younger age, just teaching kids to follow a recipe, teaching kids how to do those daily living skills, even our little babies all the way up until our kids that are adults, just teaching them. I know that we're getting away from checks and writing checks, but also just showing them how to sign their name, even if it's just learning to print their name on items, learning how to follow a recipe from step by step. What are the ingredients? What do you need? What type of recipe are we going to make? So these are very good functional skills that we can do at home and at school, and also encourage choice making. We want to provide opportunities for kids to make decisions, to develop decision-making skills. We don't always want to do everything for our kiddos. We want to teach them how to make choices. So sometimes instead of giving them, you need to do this, we can give them options. Do this, then this. Or, hey, why not just give them two things and then say, this is your choice. We can make your bed first, or you can pick up your clothes. Those are choice-making opportunities. Then we just need to stay flexible. Being flexible allows for kids to adapt to the current needs or the mood. We have to be flexible for our kiddos because sometimes they're not regulated, or sometimes they just need a break, but we have to be flexible and be able to change. But we also need to teach our kiddos how to be flexible as well. But we also need to be flexible when things don't go the way that we want them to go, or the routines that we want them to follow. Sometimes we have to adapt and readjust depending on our kiddos' moods, depending on, is this a little too much at this moment in time? So one of the things that I always say, just stay patient, be flexible, and then we can slowly see changes in behavior, but we can also slowly see that kids and their cognitive strategies, it'll help them in the long run. You can go ahead. And this is just an overview of some of the information that I shared about the cognitive strategies.
Okay, so now we're going to talk about some communication strategies to help support our students that have autism. And you're going to hear a lot of repetition throughout our training in all the different areas, especially with our first slide, where we're talking about visual supports. So even when we're focusing on communication, we can still use visuals. Can we move forward to that next slide when you have a second? So what could visual supports look like to support communication? Ms. Keisha just reviewed visual schedules. So we can use pictures or icons for different daily activities throughout the day, or even routines or transitions. As kind of shared before, it helps reduce that anxiety, and it supports the understanding of time and sequence. And so an example of that is on the bottom of the left side, where you can have pictures of things like breakfast, brush teeth, get up. And you can have those pictures in a spot for the student to, or your child to see, and they know what they need to do next in order to get ready for school. Another visual support that we could utilize to help support communication are things like communication boards or books, or even using pictures. A simple communication board is like the one right in the middle, where it has a paired picture along with the word, where if they're requesting more, it shows the sign for more, or if they like something, or if they need to stop, or they're all done. And so this gives them an easier access, as we know that they are typically thrive off of visuals. They can then point to what they're trying to communicate to you, and they have access to that within the house. Other ideas of what parents and others have done, especially when our kids are younger, is they have very specific snacks that they like, and they might have 3 or 4 different ones that they often want to have. But then when you offer the wrong one, they get really mad. Is you can have the 4 different types of snacks that they tend to prefer, and you can have a cutout from the box and have it on the fridge, and they can go and grab that picture and hand it to you. And that's their way of communicating to you that that's what they're requesting, that's what they want in the moment. And then when they hand you that picture, you label it, oh, you want fish, so you can tell me want fish. And so that's how you can use a visual support there as well for requesting. Another different type of visual support that we can utilize when it comes to communication is the use of social stories. Social stories are a very short, simple story that explains a social situation. And so it teaches the expectations. And it's something that can be repeated, because then you're not changing the story or the expectation. You can review the social story multiple times, and it helps our students understand those cues or the appropriate behavior or expected behavior when we are working with them. And then for our next slide, again, going back to that the discussion of modeling and prompting. When a student is, even if they're just signing more, then we might want to say more food or more drink, adding on to what they have just communicated by adding another word. This helps them understand that we need to use more language. We need to have more words to effectively communicate. A lot of times they communicate in those one words or their one sign icons or even one picture, and it helps them really get that input from us that they need more words in order to get that specific thing they're requesting. It also gives them the opportunity to imitate as well. The other thing we look at is, how do we prompt our kiddos when they are trying to communicate with us? There's a bunch of different ways we can prompt if we look at that little triangle on the right side of the slide. And so with that, if you start at the bottom, that's usually what we try really hard not to have to do, but like a full physical prompt. So that's if you were going to take your child to the fridge, if we're using the example of the picture, and putting your hand on their hand and you're having them grab that picture off the fridge to request that item that they want to eat. So that would be that full physical. The next would be a partial physical, where you kind of lead them to the fridge, and you kind of model. Then you yourself take that picture off and say, fish, I want fish. Or you might do a gesture by just pointing to that icon, or even a verbal, go get the picture, tell me what you want. So you're just giving them that verbal prompt to communicate that request. And so those are different ways that we can prompt our children to help support their communication, especially when we're trying to work on that requesting skill. And then with that, we always want to use those cues to encourage them to respond. Things like asking them questions or giving options, like Miss Keisha talked about. A lot of times, if we hold up 2 options, do you want fish or do you want fruit snacks? And then you let them point, and then you model it back to them. Want fish, want fruit snacks. So they're starting to constantly hear that auditory feedback of what we are trying to get them to communicate with us. So we'll go to our next slide. Some other strategies that we do encourage implementing is some peer interactions. A lot of our kiddos learn from others. Being around other peers give them the opportunities to model and practice their communication skills. So that is really important, both at school and outside of school. Social skills training. So with that, really focusing on teaching the communication skills, but in a structured way. So that may include role playing. So if someone gives you this, how should we respond? Or practicing before they're going to their first birthday party. Someone's going to be opening presents. How do you respond if you want that present? So really practicing before you getting into those situations so they understand the expectations of how they should either be behaving or communicating in those moments. Another really cool thing with technology now is video modeling. A lot of our kids on the spectrum really enjoy looking at YouTube videos, and there is a lot of great videos on there that will model what are some appropriate communication behaviors, especially for older kids like in middle school or high school. It will have social scenarios and how people respond and have discussions about what was the best way to respond? Why shouldn't we respond this other way? So video modeling is another great resource of something that you can utilize at home to help teach some social skills. And then our next slide. So with that, again, this is a little bit repetitive from before, but really we have to keep in mind, especially when they are younger, is we have to reduce how much language we're using when we're talking with our kiddos. We need to simplify our language, be very clear, and use concrete. Because with that, it helps them truly understand and pay attention to the core message that you're trying to communicate to them. If we are using slang or using figurative language, so things like it's raining cats and dogs outside, instead of saying it's raining, put on your raincoat or your dream jacket, it's going to be confusing of what that expectation is and what you're trying to relay to them if we're using the more complex language. We also want to make sure we're giving our kiddos time to respond. When we are asking them a question, a lot of us are very quick to, okay, if you don't respond right away, I'm going to repeat myself or I'm going to give you the answer. We need to give them time to process the information and to generate a response. And even then we can try and teach our kiddos to ask for time. Oh, give me a second, or I'm thinking, something like that to give themselves more time to respond to what your question or your direction was. And then also with that, anytime that we are giving instructions, we want to, if we can, provide those visual supports or even put it in writing, especially for our older kids. If we're giving them a multi-step direction, doing a little sticky note with check-off boxes so they know if they followed all the steps, they can kind of self-monitor if they were successful with what was being asked of them in that situation. Okay. And then the next slide, we always want to make sure that we're building and encouraging self-advocacy. So we want our students to be able to communicate and express what it is that they want and what they need. We can do that through choice making, as Ms. Keisha also shared. As you can see, even though we have different areas we're covering, there's a lot of very similar concepts across the board that we can do to support our kiddos. And it really helps empower our kiddos to communicate their preferences. We also want them to express their needs and wants whenever we can. We want to encourage that so they become comfortable with expressing those needs. And same with emotions. But of course, at the end of the day, too, we always need to make sure that we're being sensitive to cultural and their individualization. Every student, every child, whether they have autism or not, they have their own communication preferences. It may be uncomfortable for some to have eye contact. And if we are requiring them to make eye contact before I give them something that they're verbally requesting, we may then be decreasing their wants of communicating with us, because in their mind, I communicated to you what I wanted and you're still not giving me what I wanted because you have this other demand, and that makes me uncomfortable. So we want to keep that in mind with any students that we're working with autism, of what is the importance of that communication skill. Is it them getting their wants and needs met when we're working with them?
All right. And the final domain of support that we are going to discuss tonight is in the realm of behavior. So I did want to frame this around the fact that all behavior is communication. And so every individual, ourselves included, exhibit behaviors, and some may be positive and appropriate and adaptive. And then there's others that may be challenging, not socially appropriate, unsuccessful. And so when we conceptualize the fact that the behavior is a form of communication, then it's much easier for us to look at the behavior for what it is. So if your child is engaging in challenging behaviors, remember it's not a reflection of you. It's the way that they are trying to express their needs. And by being sympathetic to that and recognizing that, it allows us to respond in a form with a form of empathy and from a supportive stance, rather than just trying to stop the behavior. So I really highly suggest that you approach every behavior as a message from your child, and then try to find ways to help them meet that need effectively. And so some ways that we can do that, which we'll talk a little bit further about as we go through the rest of this presentation, are looking for patterns in behaviors, because if we can figure out the pattern of the behavior, then we can put in supports ahead of time to help support the behavior. We can also teach a replacement skill that's going to help your child meet the same need, but in a way that's more socially appropriate, that's more functional and successful for them. And then we can also develop some ways to proactively address the behavior. So predictability is going to be the name of the game. So for our children, as well as for ourselves, if they know what the predictable routine is, then they know what to expect on their end, and they also know what we're expecting of them. And that helps ensure that they're able to show us what we need from them. If our kiddos know what we want them to do, they're much more likely to do it. When our kiddos aren't sure of what is expected of them in a situation, especially social situations, then they're more likely to struggle through that time and to demonstrate more challenging behaviors. So some strategies to consider, which for a couple of these, I do have some examples on the following slides, but documenting their schedule. And I know we talked about that in the cognitive domain as well as the communicative domain, but for behavior too, our kiddos knowing what their schedule is, what's going to be happening next, what's coming up, it is super helpful for them to be able to demonstrate those appropriate behaviors for us, because they're not being caught off guard, and they know when things are coming. Those documented schedules also really help for things like when your kiddo knows that something's coming up, but they haven't quite gotten the concept of what it means for next week, right? So they may be thinking, when you say, oh, we're going to go to grandma's house next week, and they're really excited about that, and they're constantly trying to get ready to go to grandma's house, and you're like, it's not coming for another 6 days. By having a schedule, that's something that you could add to the schedule, so that way you can reference it, your child can reference it, and they're able to, it kind of helps make that abstract idea of time much more concrete, which then helps your child know what to expect and what's to come. And so I do have a couple of examples of that coming up. Timers are also super helpful to communicate wait time, the length of an activity, whether it's preferred or non-preferred. So whether it's, okay, you're going to get 10 minutes to play with your Legos or be on your iPad, and letting them know that that time is ticking down, versus, okay, we're going to work on homework for 5 minutes. And so they know that an end is coming. And that is really helpful to support those transitions, because sometimes our kiddos have difficulty with transitions because they just don't know when the transition is going to occur. And so by putting a time to it, and again, taking that abstract idea of time and making it concrete, where they can see the time is ticking away, or they can see how much time is left, that makes it much more helpful for them to be able to successfully navigate between activities, wait for access to something, things like that. And then also communicate changes to the schedule or routine ahead of time. Again, as Keisha mentioned in the cognitive domains, our kiddos thrive on predictability and structure and understanding what's to come. And so they do really well with routines. However, on the other side, when the routine needs to change, a lot of our kiddos with autism really struggle with that. And so if there is going to be a change to the routine, and sometimes those changes are just a natural function of life, whether it's we're going on break from school, so you're not going to be getting up at the same time, or you're not going to be leaving at the same time, or, we're going to grandma's and that's different in our routine, or it's raining, so we can't go to the park like we usually do. All of those things are changes that may not necessarily be things that we can control, but we can communicate those changes ahead of time to help, again, let our kiddos know what to expect. Again, this is really important because the school week and the school calendar is so structured, as well as the school day, that when your kiddos are going to go on break, it's a totally different routine. And so it's really helpful to establish some structure during those breaks. It doesn't mean that every minute needs to be accounted for and planned out to a T, but that there's some overall general routine for your kiddos, and then you're able to communicate those changes. So maybe on Monday, you guys are going to like a kids painting activity, and on Tuesday, you guys are going to go see a soccer game, and on Wednesday, you guys are going to Disneyland. All of those things may be fun and things that your kiddo may want to participate in, but the surprise of the change may be a lot. And so if you can communicate it ahead of time and also use your schedules that you've documented, it can make it a much more successful adventure for your kiddo. And then also consider, when is it best to front load your kid? So some kiddos, you need to give them like 5 days notice before something is going to change, because they need that amount of time to process it, to be able to understand what their expectations are, and to really prepare for the change. For other kiddos, it may be 5 minutes before we're leaving, we're communicating that change, because too much time to think about what may be to come may be anxiety producing for your kiddo. They may perseverate on it. And so that's kind of one of those places where you know your child best and what might help support them. I think the message here is just to make sure that there is that front loading that's occurring, letting them know what's to come, but then you're able to adjust and adapt it based off of your individual child's preference or what makes them most successful. So here's some examples of some different schedules, and what your schedule may look like for your child is going to be dependent on your child's age, their communication style, what works best for your family, your child's skills. And so the first schedule there that's kind of on the top left is a really standard visual schedule with icons that are representative of different tasks. So this one is representative of kind of the daily schedule from breakfast all the way to bedtime. And so there's icons to represent each of those activities, and perhaps they are attached by Velcro. And so as the activities occur, maybe your child is taking them off and putting them in a finished container. Maybe it's laminated, and so you guys cross them off with dry erase marker throughout the day so that your kiddo can see what's been completed and what's left to come. The one in the middle, again, is an adaptation, very similar to the first one. However, this one has some actual pictures. And so for some of our kiddos who struggle with non-identical matching, or they struggle with the representative icons, a way that you can adapt that to support your students' needs is to just take pictures of the actual things. So there's a picture of your kiddo brushing their teeth. There's a picture of their actual school. There may be, if they go to, like, I don't know, gymnastics or ninja class, that there's a picture of them at gymnastics. And so that way they're able to understand what is coming. And then you have a to-do column and a finish column. And as activities are completed, you or your child can move the activity from one side to the next. So again, it helps your child know what's to come. I know for myself, I love checking things off of the list. So it kind of gives you a sense of accomplishment. And so that may be something that may really work for your child. The next one going across the top may be for a student who may be older, or who has some reading skills that they're able to recognize the time. And so it has the day broken into different categories, and outlines what's going to happen throughout the day. This type of schedule, again, if your kiddo is able to read and to recognize and understand time, is super easy because you can make it on the go. You can literally just pull out something, jot it down and say, okay, here's our schedule. When we're at Target, we're going to do this, 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 and this. And that's something that you can do I forgot to mention this, but for the schedules with the actual icons, there are also apps that are available that you can build them as you go. And so that can be something too that if you want to have that as a strategy in your back pocket for, oh no, we're going into this new experience, or we're at Disneyland and the kiddo really wants to ride the Mickey's Runaway Railroad, and we're going to ride that in 3 rides, being able to develop that schedule on the fly. So there's apps that you can do that with too. But a written schedule is really easy. So if your kiddo has that skill set, then you can just write out what's to come and then they can cross it out. But again, they get that predictability of knowing what's coming. On the bottom left, again, this is a routine that kind of has a combination of those icons or images, as well as some written language. So it goes from wake up to nap time, and it has each of the activities, and then the kiddo would go through and cross them out. You could also make it so that they color in the square, or they get a sticker for each of the squares, and so you can kind of tie it to some reinforcement. So there's a lot of different ways in which you can make that functional for your child and your family, with, again, keeping in mind that the goal is just to have your child have an understanding in whatever way makes sense for them of what's coming and then what they've already completed. And then the last one that we have there is actually just a picture of a calendar, an electronic calendar. Again, for thinking about some of those older students or students who are really tech savvy and are able to also read the language, and that makes it so that your schedule is able to be for the day, for the week, for the month, whatever makes sense for your kiddo and your family. It's available on your phone, it's available on any device, and so that makes it so that you can add things to the schedule, your kid can add things to the schedule. You may have to, monitor that because they may put a bunch of trips to, ice cream or Chuck E. Cheese or something, but there's the ability for everyone to add and participate on that. And then you can also, if you have access to it, you can also then monitor as your child is completing tasks that may be on there. So those are some different options that are available for schedules that can really be helpful, especially for behavior management, because it helps your kiddo know what to expect, and it allows for you to have a point of reference. If something is not going to be available now, or it's not happening today, but it's coming up, you have an ability to reference that, and your kiddo knows and understands that something's coming. All right, so again, a lot of our strategies and supports do overlap between the domains, but we look at them a little bit differently. So being sure to set clear and simple expectations. For the most part, if your kiddo knows what to do, they're more likely to do it. So sometimes when we really want to focus on setting those clear and simple expectations are prior to transitions. So we are going to be leaving the house and we're going to go to Target. I definitely have these conversations with my kiddos because otherwise there will be a meltdown in the toy aisle of Target, right? So before we go to Target, usually right when we get there, hey, we're going to Target, we're going for this, this, and this. We're not going to get a toy today. We're just going to go into this section because you guys need some more crayons. So we're going to get some crayons and then we're going to go home. Being able to share the routine and the expectations ahead of time makes it a lot less likely that I'm going to have a meltdown in Target because we're not getting a toy today. And the same thing applies for all of our students. If we're going to the library, letting them know that when we go to the library, we're going to walk in. It's quiet there, so we're going to need to use our quiet voice. If you need something, here's how you can communicate to me. This is our goal. This is what we expect to achieve. And navigating that ahead of time rather than trying to navigate that in the quiet library where your child is getting frustrated. They may be raising their voice and you're trying to calm them. And so navigating that and setting those expectations ahead of time makes it much more likely that you'll have a successful trip and a successful time. It is really important to provide those expectations, especially if it's going to be a new environment, one that your kiddo hasn't been in before, so that they know what to expect. Because again, if they can predict what's going to happen, if they know what's expected of them, they're much more likely to demonstrate those positive and successful behaviors and make it a successful opportunity. I also, again, for my kids, when we're going to the doctor, I let them know ahead of time, okay, we're going for your checkup. It's not, you're not scheduled to get shots this time, so that might be something. So then they're a lot more calm going into the doctor's or the dentist's office because they know that it's less likely to hurt versus when it's like, okay, this is going to be a time that we potentially may be getting a shot. And so then they know what to expect. So I don't get as much of the behaviors every trip to the doctor's office because you're kind of setting those expectations ahead of time. You also want to make sure that you keep your language simple and direct, especially if your kiddo is frustrated or escalated. The more simple that you can keep your language, the more likely it is that they're going to understand it and be able to respond to it. So for all of us, whenever we are frustrated or escalated, it's difficult for us to take in a lot of language. And so that's why we want to keep it simple and specific. So that way, they're most likely to hear what you're telling them. If I give a whole paragraph about, my kiddo needing to keep their hands to themselves, but they're really, really frustrated, they're not likely to hear all of that. Maybe they heard the first word I said and the last word I said, but nothing else in between. So we want to make sure that we keep it really simple, especially when our kiddos are frustrated, because that helps it be more likely that they're going to hear and understand what we're saying. Also, focus on what you need your child to do or would like your child to do rather than what you want them to stop doing. So instead of stop running, say use your walking feet. Instead of don't hit, calm hands or hands to self. Instead of don't yell, use a quiet voice. So by focusing on what we want our child to do, they're more likely to do that. But when we tell them just to stop doing something, oftentimes kiddos get creative. And if they do stop, they do something else that may also be problematic or challenging. So we want to be really efficient with our words and our directives by telling them what we would like them to do rather than what we want them to stop doing. All right. And then we have to reinforce. Only the behaviors that are reinforced will remain, and that is true for our kiddos. That is true for kiddos with autism. That's true for any kiddos. That's true for adults, is that what is reinforced is what will stick around. That's what we're motivated to continue to do. So thinking about, like, a lot of people have goals to exercise for the new year. And if they're exercising and they're seeing the results that they want, that's reinforcing and they're more motivated to continue to do that. But if, they're getting up early, they're going to the gym and they're doing all this working out and they're not seeing any positive outcome in the direction that they want, they're not likely to keep doing it because it's a lot of work. The same thing is true for our kiddos. They're not willing to exert that effort if they're not getting that reinforcement back to be able to let them know that it's worth it to continue doing this. So some strategies to consider are having an established and consistent system in place that is meaningful to your child. So you want to make sure that the system makes sense to your kiddo, and also that whatever it is that they're working for is something that they actually like and appreciate and would be motivated by. A lot of people think a really easy one is candy, right? That all kids will work for candy. I have had a ton of students who aren't motivated at all to earn candy. That's not their currency. They don't like candy. And so offering candy isn't going to be a motivating factor to get them to do the behaviors that we want. And so you do know your kiddos best and you know what things really motivate them. For some kiddos, it may be tech time. For other kiddos, it may be money. For other kiddos, it might be toys. For other kiddos, it might be special privileges. It might be time, special time with mom or dad or their special loved one. It might be a sleepover. It might be a trip to the store. There's lots of things that our kiddos might be motivated by. And oftentimes, kids and teenagers can be motivated by things that don't cost anything. Sometimes it's, getting to stay up 15 minutes late. Sometimes it may be getting extra outside time. It may be getting to pick what we have for dinner. Things that, we were already going to have dinner anyway. They get the choice to pick. Sometimes things just as simple as that are motivating to our kiddos. And so it doesn't always have to be super costly, but having a system in place is going to be the first step in helping to manage and improve your kiddos' behaviors. Also, you want to focus on specific behaviors rather than just a collective being good or doing a good job. If you tie it to a specific behavior, it's much more likely that you're going to be able to improve that behavior. If it's too broad, then your kiddos get to select which things they do to earn the reinforcement and then which things they kind of ignore. So if you do it for a collective, like being good, and so maybe your kiddo can earn their reinforcer for one of 5 things: keeping their hands to themselves, doing all their homework, cleaning up their toys, going to bed on time, and brushing their teeth. Maybe your kiddo really hates brushing their teeth. So maybe they're cleaning up their toys all the time. And so they're earning reinforcement for that. They are going to bed on time. And so they're earning reinforcement for that. They're doing all their homework. And so they're earning reinforcement for that, but they are never brushing their teeth. But they've still gotten all this access to reinforcement for other things. And so it's kind of worth it to them to miss out because they didn't brush their teeth. And so if we keep it targeted to specific behaviors, then we're really able to focus on changing that behavior and improving it. And then we can move on to the next thing as that behavior improves. When you are trying to pick that behavior, definitely pick something that is potentially maybe not 100% new for your kiddo, but they have some exposure to, but then also something that they're regularly going to need to do. So things like making their bed, they're going to need to do that every day. And so that's something that you could regularly encounter. It's a part of their natural routine. And so the reinforcement opportunities are there and they're likely to improve that behavior. But something like, I don't know, going to the dentist. Most kiddos go to the dentist twice a year, and so they don't have a lot of opportunities to earn that reinforcement, and so it's not likely that they're going to improve that behavior. So when you select that behavior, definitely pick something that naturally occurs within your routine. It's something that they have a little bit of exposure to, and then it's something that happens enough that you're able to reinforce them on a regular basis, because the more reinforcement they access, the more likely it is that they're going to keep that behavior around and improve. Also, you want to make sure that you only give access to whatever it is that you've identified as the reinforcer when it's been earned. So when you're selecting that reinforcer, avoid things that your kiddo can get access to at other times. So for example, the iPad. Some kiddos use an iPad or a device in the car to help them stay calm during long drives or to and from school. So that may not be something that you want to use as your reinforcer, because whatever it is that you're using as your reinforcer, you want to restrict it to only being available for engagement in that target behavior or that behavior that you're trying to change. So if we're trying to increase our kiddo brushing their teeth at night, then whatever your kiddo is earning for brushing their teeth needs to be only available when they have successfully brushed their teeth. Or if it's for, keeping their hands to themselves at school, then it should only be available for that, because that helps ensure that your kiddo stays motivated to earn it for engaging in that appropriate behavior. You also want to make sure that you match the amount of effort to earn the reinforcer with the value of the reinforcer. So if I offered to everyone, hey, you can get $1 for washing my car, I probably wouldn't get anyone who would be interested to do that. However, if I said, I will give $50 to anyone who washes my car, I'm probably going to have a lot of people who are interested and willing to do it, because the reward aligns with the effort. And the same thing is true for our kiddos. So if it's something that's really hard for our kiddos to do, or it's a big change for them, then we want to make sure that the reinforcer is just as big. If it's something that this is kind of an everyday thing, they kind of got it, then you can lessen the reinforcer down, because they don't need as much reinforcement to do it, because it's already a skill that they've been working on and they're doing well with. And then when challenging behaviors do arise, because they arise for all of us, if you already have a system in place that you have for reinforcement, then you can reference that. And a lot of times that will help the behaviors kind of turn around and help your kiddo de-escalate. So if your kiddo has been working to use their words instead of tantruming, and your kiddo starts to get frustrated, and there's maybe they're starting to stump their feet, or they're starting to engage in whatever their tantrum looks like, you can remind them, hey, remember, we're working for your choice of dinner on Friday for having 5 days where we have calm behaviors. And so that may be just kind of the reminder that may help your kiddo decide, okay, I'm going to take my deep breaths, I'm going to use my words, rather than continuing forward with the tantrum behavior. And so if you already have that system in place, and it's really easy to reference it, if you don't already have that system in place and then you offer, hey, you can pick dinner on Friday, it actually reinforces that tantrum behavior rather than using their words. So it's really helpful to have it in place already. Here's just a few examples of some different reinforcement systems. Truly, you can be as creative and specialize it to whatever works for your kiddo and your family as you see fit. The first is just a kind of standard sticker chart. And so it has the tasks or behaviors on one side, and then it has the stickers that they're earning across. And so usually you set some type of cash-in value. So once you have 10 stickers, then you can get a trip to Dollar Tree. Or once you have 10 stickers, then you get to pick dessert on Friday, or you get to go to the park, or whatever it is that your kiddo is working for. You have some quantity of stickers that they need to fill, or they have to fill the whole chart. And then they earn whatever that reward is. The middle one is a first then visual. And so you're going to have your first listed, which is usually going to be something that your kiddo is maybe doesn't want to do, maybe harder for your kiddo to do, maybe non-preferred. And then you're going to have your then, which is going to be the thing that they really want. So what they're working for, that's motivating for them. And so first, clean up your room, then you can play video games. First, do your homework, then you can have a treat. First, take a shower, and then you can have XYZ. So that first and then is going to be kind of a quicker reinforcer, but it's going to be that less preferred thing and then the more preferred thing. The next visual is just a marble jar. So sometimes kiddos, especially if your kiddo understands it, and a lot of teachers use these in their classroom too, is that there's a jar, it has things that you're putting into the jar, and once the jar is full, then your kiddo earns the reinforcer. The one on the left, that's kind of the Mario theme, is just a standard kind of token board. It's just themed to something that this kiddo was interested in. And so once they get all the tokens, then they earn the reward. And then there's always, some kiddos are really motivated by cash. Maybe it's to exchange for a trip, maybe it's to exchange for a toy or a special treat, but that may be motivating as well. And then we also want to make sure that we're teaching our kiddos what to do instead. So not only are we addressing the behaviors through reinforcement, through priming them, having schedules, but we also want to replace those challenging behaviors with something else that they can do that still meets the needs. And so some ways that we can teach this is through modeling appropriate behavior, also practicing with your kiddos when they're calm, ways to self-soothe, asking for help, identifying their emotions, and then role-playing social skills that they may need in real life situations. So like Sam shared, they're going to go to that birthday party. What can we do? There's going to be new people here. You can greet them, and kind of role-playing that ahead of time. Next slide. And then plan ahead for what you can. So again, when we're looking at those patterns of what behaviors may occur, if we can figure out what are some potential triggers for your kiddo, then you know when you might expect a behavior, and then you can plan for it. So if your kiddo is really sensitive to loud environments, keep some headphones in the bag, so that way if you're going to a place like the mall where it can be very loud, that your kiddo is able to put them on and you're able to address that ahead of time. Also have items to address known wants and needs of your kiddos. Have those handy. So I know for myself, I always have snacks in my bag because I feel like my kids always want a snack, and when they get hangry, behaviors occur. So having those things available. Definitely consider the environment in relation to your child's needs. Some kids have different preferences and needs than others. And so making sure that you can address those ahead of time, and then take into account your child's routine when you're scheduling activities. So things like avoiding nap times if your kids still nap, if morning works better for your kiddos than afternoons, just kind of taking those things into account when scheduling those activities. All right. And then our last slide there is just a kind of summary of those behavior supports and strategies. And we are right at our time. So we thank you for joining us and allowing us to share some of this information to you. I did put my email in the chat. If you have some specific questions that you weren't able to ask during the presentation, please feel free to reach out to me or to Sam or Keisha. Our emails all follow the same format, and we'd be happy to help.
Wow, that was so informative. So thank you so much to our team, for our special education team, for all of those really good strategies, very concrete strategies. Parents, I've put the link of the presentation in the chat. So if you would like to, and I just put it in one more time, if you would like to revisit the presentation, as you know, these are always posted on our district YouTube page, the recording, I should say. But if you would like to go in and just look at the slide deck at your own time, that is now available for you. This would generally be the space where we take questions, but as Ms. Rashawn said, we are right at time. So in the chat, Ms. Rashawn did put in earlier her email, but you can also just go to alvordschools.org to the Special Education Department webpage, and you will have the phone number and contact information for our guest experts there. So with that, thank you again. Thank you, Rashawn. Just put in the chat one more time. Thank you again to Director Sebastian and her team, everybody who is here today. We appreciate you. But again, we can't do this work without your partnership, parents, and we can't do this work without our interpreters. Thank you, Patti, and thank you to Bayana for interpreting for our Spanish and our Arabic families. And we're getting some thank you, some shout outs in the chat.